Hey, it's your open source advocate, and I'm back with another tutorial. Today we're going to cover Nextcloud. If you've not heard of Nextcloud, then think about Dropbox or Box, OneDrive, Google Drive, any of those things that are proprietary systems owned by other people where you store your data, where they have access to it. Don't be fooled. Don't think that because you encrypted it, don't think that because they say it's encrypted that they can't access it and look at it and see it. The only way to really be sure that your data is being stored in a way that you want is to run your own system. So Nextcloud is pretty nice, and it's so easy to install, particularly on a Linux-based system as far as the server side goes. There are clients for desktop, there are clients for Android, for iOS, for Linux, for Windows, for Mac. It doesn't matter. You access your files through the browser, but you also get a folder set up inside of your Explorer is what I'll call it, because most of the people out here know Windows. If you're a Mac user, then it's under Finder. So it's really a great way and an easy way to hold your files on your machine, but then also have them sync up to the cloud and sync with other machines. So really it is just a Dropbox replacement, except Nextcloud has so much more than that now. It started off as own cloud, and then these guys split off and kind of started their own project called Nextcloud, and they've really just added to it and added to it and added to it. They've got the syncing down really, really nicely and really well. But they also have other apps. So now it has notes, it has calendar, it has voice and video chat and text chat. It has email. It has just so many different things that you can add to the system once you've got it set up. So it's really a cool system to be able to set up and host. And particularly if you're an IT professional, it's a really, really great system, and it's something that you should look into if you want to make sure that your data is remaining on your systems and that you're in control of that. So there's a few ways to set it up. You can set it up locally on your own machine, in your own home or your own network. And then you might want to have some stuff set up to be able to access that from the outside internet, maybe a reverse proxy of some kind of port forwarding, things like that. But the other way to do it is to put it on something like DigitalOcean. Now there's limitations when you do something like DigitalOcean or Linode or any of those other systems. They don't give you a ton of space with the droplets. They do have block storage that you can add for certain amounts of money per month. But if you're really looking to save all of your photos and things like that into a Nextcloud server, you really want to set up something with a lot of storage, and probably you want to set that up in some kind of RAID or ZFS setup, and then make sure you have redundancy where it's actually not only syncing between your devices, but syncing also between two server class RAID setups, so that you've got that kind of RAID 10 type backup. It's really, there's a lot to it, and we could go into it a ton, but if you're just looking for something to sync files up and down without having to plug in a USB or email yourself something or things like that, and you're still concerned about the security of those files or your data, Nextcloud is really an awesome option, and I'm super excited to show it to you. There's probably tons of videos out there about it, but I want to go through the install and setup with you, because it's going to be really great, and it's really so straightforward. You're going to be amazed at how easy it is to get it set up. So I'm going to go over to DigitalOcean. I'm going to go and create a droplet, and again, this is what they call their virtual private servers. So I'm just going to stick with Ubuntu here. I'm going to stick with standard, and again, you can run this on the $10 droplet. If you go up to the 15 or 20, you see that you start to get into a little bit bigger sizes as far as storage, more RAM, things like that, more transfer. So as you're looking at the $15 and $20 ones, I mean, this becomes a little bit more attractive because you get a bit more power out of the system. You get more storage, you get, again, more transfer, things like that. So if you're doing a lot of file moving and they're bigger files, if you're doing like video files that are 8, 12, 10, 12, 15, 20, 50 gigabyte, AVCHD type files or 4K video files, then you may want something like this so that you can have that transfer available to you all month. But if not, then the $10 ought to be enough if you're just moving files up and down. So I'm going to click on the $10. We're going to go down here, and I'm not going to add block storage, but you can also add block storage right here. So if you need more storage space, you can click on this button, and it'll open up an option set where you can pick how much storage you want, and it shows you how much that's going to cost you extra. Then you pick your location that's geographically closest to you. You do have to pick a location that can serve both your server and your storage in the same location, so be aware of that. But again, pick one that's geographically close to you and then make sure it has block storage if you need that. So there's additional options. I'm again not going to do those. I'm going to do my one-time password in this case because I need to set up a non-root user, and we're going to go through that process. So my host name, I'm just going to call this incloud.opensourceisawesome.com because that's what I'm actually going to set up my subdomain to be. And then I'm going to go ahead and create this thing. So we're going to let that go ahead and generate the server that I need. And while we're waiting, I'm going to go over to opensourceisawesome.com and my Hover account. So Hover is the place where I register my domain and where I manage that domain. So once I'm in there and I'm on the page for that account, I just want to go to DNS, and I'm going to get ready to actually add the IP address through DNS. So once my page loads up for DNS, I'm going to hit add a new record, and I do want it to be an A record, and we're going to call it incloud, and then we'll go get that IP address from DigitalOcean. And we'll just copy that, and we will paste it right into this location here, and see, we can set this to 5 minutes. And we'll give that a few minutes to get set. So we've got our DigitalOcean droplet, we've got the IP address, we're getting it set up in Hover, and then what we're going to do next is basically go to a terminal window. So we'll go back over here to Nextcloud for a minute, and we're going to go here, and we're going to say SSH root at incloud.opensourceisawesome.com. And we're going to log in. And they emailed me this password, so I've got to go get this password first, and then it'll ask me to change that password. Stop. Alright, we're going to paste in the password that they sent me. Then they're asking for it again. And now I'll put in a strong password. And we are in. So first thing we always do on DigitalOcean is update and upgrade the system. Alright, so we've updated and upgraded the system, and I've gone ahead and rebooted it. We're back in, and I've got to go through a few steps here. So first thing I want to do is just create a non-root user with sudo privileges. So first thing I'm going to do is add user Brian. It's going to ask me for the password for my user. Again, make a strong password. So you just go through that little wizard to fill out the information. If you actually have this information and it's important to you for some reason, feel free to fill it out. It's not something I specifically needed for this. Now I need to add my user to the sudoers group so that I have sudo privileges. So the way we do that is user mod -a capital G sudo and then the username. So now I should be part of the sudo users group. So I'm going to exit out of this. If I can type exit correctly, I'll exit out of that. And then we're going to go in and I'm going to log in as Brian instead of root. Okay, awesome. So next thing you want to do when you're setting up a system like this, and I've talked about this before, but I've not done it until now, so I want to show you this. You want to make sure your firewall is on and you have the correct exceptions set up. So we're going to do that. So first thing you can do is just check the status of the firewall, and in Ubuntu it's the UFW. I think that's the uncomplicated firewall. So you do sudo, because I'm no longer root, UFW, and then status. It's going to prompt for my password. Oh. There we go. So it tells me that the UFW is not active right now. Now that we know it's inactive, we want to see what apps are in the list. So we'll say sudo UFW app list. And we can see it has OpenSSH in the list. We want to make sure that it's allowed. Sudo UFW allow OpenSSH. So we've updated the rules, which is great. Now I can do this again. Alright, so now we've got our firewall active, and we can do sudo UFW status. And we can see that it's active and it's allowing OpenSSH. The next thing we need to do is we need to allow port 80 and port 443, because that's where the web browser is going to run that is actually hosting the pages that we see for Nextcloud. So we're going to do sudo UFW allow 80, 443 /TCP. And then one more time, sudo UFW status. And we can see now we're allowing port 80 and port 443, and it's TCP. IPv6 and IPv4 are allowed. So we're good. Now we have to go and get the Nextcloud installation going, and it's super easy. You do sudo snap install Nextcloud. That's really it. It's going to go out and it's going to actually install the snap for Nextcloud. So if you don't know what a snap is, it's a really awesome thing that Ubuntu came up with, and a lot of the other distros are adopting and have adopted. It basically installs software, and then as the makers of the software put out updates, within minutes of the update being pushed, your system will just automatically update that software in the background for you if it's not in use. So the next time you're not in the software, it's going to update it. So it's a really great system, and it's really cool because it keeps you up to date on the software as you go along. Okay, so now Nextcloud should be installed. We would be able to access this now at our domain. The problem is that when Nextcloud installs, it tends to look at the local host and set that up only. We can try it and see if we can access it. So let's just go to incloud.opensourceisawesome.com. It comes up. Okay, so it wants to let us log in, so it tried to autofill my information, which is fine, but I want to make sure that I'm getting a strong password in here. And we're going to say finish setup. Alright, so I'm going to say no, don't remember my password. A safe home for all of your data. Awesome. Now I'm going to close this. And initially you'll always see this. They have some default files in here just to kind of give you an example of what you can do and how you can use the Nextcloud interface. So you have a share button, you have actions that you can take on this folder or these files, and time and information about the last time it was updated. And of course you can sort by those columns to rearrange things just like you can in any file system. And basically that's what this is. It's just a file system that's out online that you're syncing your data to. So if I want to add a document, I click on the plus, I can click upload file, I can create a new folder, or I can just create a new text file. So let's just start with a text file. I'm going to give it a name, and it's just going to open up a nice little text editor right here in the web browser, and I can start typing. That's really all there is to it. Now I can just reopen this file when I want to see what's there. I can edit it. I can do everything right here from inside of the web browser, which is pretty awesome. Now up here you'll see some different applications, and then down the left side you'll see some different applications and options. So up here we'll see activity. We can click on that and just see the different activity that's been going on our system. So here you can filter that down by all activities, my activity, etc., all the way down the side here to kind of filter out that information. If you have photos in the pictures area, you'll have galleries that you can actually go and set up or see. So that's pretty nice because if I click into this, I can actually see the different photos in more of a gallery style setting, which is pretty nice when you're looking at photos and looking for certain photos or just wanting to enjoy the photos you've taken. This is a really cool feature. So the next big thing is over here on the right. So this is the gear icon that you see for everything that indicates that you've got settings. So here you'll see we have settings, apps, users. This is basically our administrative control panel. So not everyone will have all of these options. Of course you have log out and information and about. So first let's just go to settings. So there's quite a bit of settings that you can actually set up in here, and each user that you invite or allow in will have their settings similar to this. They can add icons. So this is a multi-user system. The system can also be federated with other Nextcloud installs, which is kind of cool. When you think about that, you can have a Nextcloud install for your organization, and if you have a sister organization or division, you can set up a Nextcloud install for them that's separate, but you can federate those things so that you can easily share documents across those. So as you go through here, you've got security, so you can actually go in and set up your two-factor authentication. You can set it up and change your passwords. You can do a lot of things here to really make this a much more secure instance. Again, you can see activity and decide what activity is going to be tracked. So this is for your mobile and desktop applications. So you can get desktop apps. You can get the Google Play Store for your Android app or your iOS Store for the iOS app. And these are pretty nice. When you log into them, they don't pull all of the data down to your device. At least on the iOS side. I can't speak for Android actually. On the iOS side, it's when you tap on an actual item that it will bring it down, and you can see it in the previewers available on the iOS device, which is pretty great. It's a great way to take your stuff with you on the move, see something pretty quickly, whether it's iPhone, iPad, it doesn't really matter. And then your desktop apps, even though it says app, it's really an applet that would run up here and in the top of the screen, or at the bottom of the screen, depending on what you're running. And it's a sync application so that you get a folder inside of your different files and folders that are on your machine. So you would have a Nextcloud folder here that you can then go into and see all of the files and folders that you're syncing between different machines. You can connect your calendar and your contacts. And then there's WebDAV that allows you to access these files through third-party applications as well. They also have built-in calendars and contacts in the system so that you can actually have a calendar here online that you're running and create calendar events and share those with other people. It's pretty great, and they have an email client application that you can also add that we'll get into in a little bit. Accessibility, so you can choose from day mode, night mode. You can set up some fonts that are intended for people with low vision. These fonts are made specifically for that purpose. They have an intentionally thicker base of the letter than they do at the top. Then you've got your sharing, and you can set up sharing between different applications out there in the world. Once you get into administration, you kind of get your overview section, basic settings, monitoring, and you can kind of actually monitor how the server's performing, which is pretty great. So you can see right now I'm really pinging the CPU here, but the memory usage is actually pretty low, so pretty awesome. And as you go down, you've got all of these tools built in for your settings for your administration of the system. Okay, now I want to go down to the apps. So this is where Nextcloud really stands out from the other offerings like Dropbox and things like that. You have these different applications that people create for Nextcloud and get added to the App Store for Nextcloud. I'm going to make this just a little bigger. You have an accessibility application, so here it is, official. And you can basically see if these are enabled. So if it says disable, then it's already enabled in your system. And if it's not enabled, then you can enable it in the system. Here are apps for multimedia. So if you're storing audio, you can have an audio player in here. If you want to edit your ID3 tags for your audio, you can do that. So there's a lot of really great stuff in here. You have mapping, you have all kinds of different editors in here. I'm really impressed with it. I love Nextcloud. I've used them for a long time on my home systems. I want to take a minute and actually go over the process that I use whenever I'm creating this and just show you how quickly it goes. So first we're going to create this droplet. Just going to make it a Ubuntu droplet. I'm going to go over and select the $10 droplet. I'm going to move on down and leave it on New York. And we're going to pick one-time password so we can create the non-root user. First I need to give it the subdomain that I want, ncloud.opensourceisawesome.com. Then we'll create the droplet. I'm going to let this just run because it does take a second for that to happen. Meanwhile, I'm going to go over to Hover, go to my nCloud system that I had set up yesterday. I'm just going to edit it, take out the old IP, and put in the new one that I get from DigitalOcean. So that's gone, just take it out. We'll go back and let the DigitalOcean droplet finish spinning up. Usually takes less than a minute. And it's done. So now I'm just going to copy the IP address and I'll paste it in over at Hover. And that part's finished. I need to go bring up my terminal and I'm going to SSH into my new droplet. Now the one thing you have to wait on whenever you do this particular process is for DigitalOcean to email you the one-time password. That used to happen pretty fast, but over the last couple of weeks I noticed it takes several minutes for that to come in. So I am going to just stop this part of the recording and let that happen, and then I'll cut it back together whenever I've got the password. Okay, I've got the password. I'm going to get back in here, and now I've got to tell it yes, and then I've got to give it that password that DigitalOcean sent me in my email. Once I do that, it'll log me in and I'll confirm the password. And then I need to enter my own strong password. And then I'll repeat it one time. Once I've entered that, we're in. So now the first thing we should always do is update and upgrade the system. That runs through, and this time I'm going to let it run just so you can see how long it actually takes to do this. I usually kind of cut this down or compress it or make it go a little bit faster just so you won't be sitting there bored while it upgrades. But this is an important process because security updates come out especially since these images were initially made. So you really need to go and run these updates, because you get security updates, you get kernel updates that have security updates within them on top of the other things that are coming out in the Linux ecosystem. The Ubuntu packages and other packages that are on the system also get updates. So this really turns out to be a very important part of getting the system upgraded. And it's important that you go out and do that before you start running it for production, for sure. Once you get this thing to go through the upgrade process, usually, especially after about a year, and this has been a year and a half now since 1804 came out, you're going to have some kernel image updates. So in a second it'll kind of come to a long running process. That's the kernel image being put into place, and then it'll pop up with a question on the screen. And when that happens, you really just need to leave the default setting. DigitalOcean already has things kind of set up the way that it should be to run well on their system. So I trust that they know what they're doing. And when that pops up, I usually just hit tab to get to the OK, and then I will accept that setting. And then once it happens again, do the same thing, and pretty quickly after that you're done with your upgrade. So now the next thing I always do is just reboot the server. I give it about 20 seconds and it's usually back up and running. So I just kind of sit back, wait for a few seconds, let that finish, and everything should be good to go. So once that's kind of had a chance to run, I'll start logging back in. And we're going to go ahead and try to log back in now. So I'm just going to go back to the old command. I'll put in my new password. Now I'm still logging in as root, but the next thing I need to do is actually set up my non-root user. So this is pretty easy. You just do add user and give it the username you want, and it'll prompt you for the password for that user and then for a little bit more information. But it creates the home directory and everything else like that. So it's not something you have to go do manually. It used to be a little bit more of a manual process to get that to happen. You can fill out all these fields if you want to, but it's not necessary. Once you've made your non-root user, you do want to give them sudo privileges. So you definitely want to go type in the command to do that, which is usermod-a capital G space sudo space the username, and that adds them to the sudoers group. And I'm done there. So I can exit out, and now I'm just going to SSH back in, but I'm going to SSH back in as my non-root user. And once I get into the system, I just need to install, or I need to set up the firewall, and then I'll install Nextcloud. So first you want to set up the firewall, and now that we're non-root, we need to use sudo to do that. So first time you do it, it's going to prompt you for the sudo password in order to do that. So I can see the status, it's inactive, which is what I expect. I mistyped the command, so I had to go look it up real quick, but it should be app list, not just app. I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing. So if you have these little kind of fumbles, it'll take you just a second, and then you can move on with your day. So I'm just fumbling around here trying to figure out, like, what did I type wrong. It really wasn't anything specific other than I just forgot to add the word list at the end. So there we go. Now I can see that it's got OpenSSH already there, but the firewall's inactive. So first I want to make sure that OpenSSH is allowed. So I want to allow that, and then I can enable the firewall. Once I've done that, I'm just going to enter that command here. Oh, actually first I'm going to allow port 80, port 443 on TCP. This is something else you could do after you enable the firewall. It doesn't really matter when you do it. In this case, you just want to make sure OpenSSH is allowed first if you're SSH'd into the system, or else you're going to get booted out of the system when you enable the firewall. So that's what it's warning me about there. Double check it, everything is allowed, so the firewall is up and running, so we're a little bit more protected now from the mean, ugly internet out there. So now I'm going to install Nextcloud, and that's just sudo snap install Nextcloud. The installation just runs, and it's just running through the process that it's doing to get that installed and everything decompressed or uncompressed or whatever the word is, and it'll get everything installed. So it's pretty nice. It goes out and does all the work for you. It's not a UI based installer, but it's just as easy. Type in a few words and there it goes. After this, I'm going to set up the Let's Encrypt certificates. So we'll let the install finish here. Just takes a couple of minutes. And it's done. So now it's time to get the Let's Encrypt certificate set up. So when you do this, it warns you, it tells you, hey, there's a few things you need to make sure you have. So if you have that stuff set up, just hit yes. You'll enter in your email address, and then you enter in the actual subdomain or domain name that you own that you're pointing to the Nextcloud system. Now this has to be available on port 80 or Let's Encrypt will fail, so keep that in mind. If you're trying to run Nextcloud on a different port than 80, it's not going to work. But in this case I am, so everything should go through with no problem. It's just going to go out and ask Let's Encrypt to try to hit my site and then set up the new certificates with Apache, and then it'll restart Apache and it's done. So now we can go out actually and see if our site's available, and we can go to it on HTTPS, which is what we want. We want there to be some security built into the system when we do this. And there we go, it's up and running. That's it. It's done. That's all it took to get us up and running on Nextcloud. I hope you'll get out there and consider using Nextcloud for your systems as well. If you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, leave me comments so I can get better, and I hope you'll join me next time. Thank you.